So I have to say that, it doesn't speak to my dedication as a hockey reporter that instead of watching the Stanley Cup final live last night, I watched it on DVR because I had tickets to go see Rush, Russ. And, they're on the 40th anniversary tour, and it's probably their last major tour. From what I hear, Neil Peart has back problems, so he doesn't
Most
want.
drummers, most really good active drummers that drum for like 30, 40 years have back problems.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Collins had neck problems. He had to have neck surgery, and now he can barely pick up a pair of drumsticks. But I have to say, I've seen Rush, I think 7 or 8 times. First time I saw them, I was 14 years old at the Odd in Buffalo, and that, by the way, is the concert I believe. I mean, if I'm wrong on this, don't bash me, but I believe the album cover for the album Exit Stage Left, which was their live album in the early 80s, the picture on the front cover of that was from the Odd in Buffalo, and I was at that show. So
wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put together something from history like that. It's nice. Look, I'm not a big Rush fan. I'll be the first to admit it.
Yeah.
I know what I appreciate about him is, I think Neil Peart's great. I've always thought Geddy Lee was a talent. Their music's just not my thing. There's certain songs I like. Yeah. I do like the fact that Geddy Lee's tight with John Anderson, and there's a respect there, and so that's always been kind of cool. Did I like the fact that they did the Great White North thing back in the day? Sure, that was all in good fun, and that used to get a lot of radio play. So I have respect for them.
Yeah, I mean, they played a lot of their hits, but they also played some of their old stuff, and I've had a private conversation with you about seeing Genesis for the last time in, I think it was 2007, and how that was one of the probably worst concert experiences of my life, because I had built it up as, okay, Genesis, this is the first time I've seen them in whatever 15, 20 years.
Had unrealistic expectations.
Right, and Phil Collins couldn't sing the high notes anymore, and other than 2112, they played every one of their songs in the same key. Geddy can't hit the high notes like he did in 1975, but he's still great. And they did a couple songs. One is one of my favorites called Xanadu from an album in the mid 70s that this was note perfect and unbelievable. So they could still do it.
John song, I hope.
What's that?
Not from the Olivia Newton-John song Xanadu.
No, not from the movie soundtrack. No, this is a completely different Xanadu. Okay. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like when you get a chance to see a band like that. And the funny thing was, and this is an encouraging thing for future generations, there were a lot of 12-year-old and like 13-year-old kids at that concert last night because they like Rush, or their parents like Rush, and this might be the last chance they have to see them.
It speaks to the older bands, the super groups that are starting to fade now finally, that we all thought would fade in the 80s, that younger people like them. And it's a little bit of a shot at some of the newer bands too, that, hey, you're not really capturing my imagination enough for me to spend my money to go see you. So now I'm going to go see these guys. Yeah. And I do actually see in a lot of friends' kids, there's an undercurrent how much they really appreciate some of these classic bands. And that makes me happy because I'm a real instruments guy. I hate auto-tune. Yeah. I like rap for the most part. If there's a rap guy that really sings and plays instruments, I'll listen. Mm-hmm. But if not, I have no use for it. That's just what I like and don't like,
Yeah, I mean, I know some young kids who like Led Zeppelin. I mean, which is, I think that's fantastic. Or The Who, but the thing is, they were introduced to The Who by like being the soundtrack for CSI or CSI Miami or something like that. Which
I know it's a little bogus that way. And I really loved Who Are You when it came out, but now it's got a whole different meaning, and it's not their best song, obviously. But again, like, when I did see The Who, I didn't have these unrealistic expectations. And so for any concert goers that's seeing a favorite band that's been around 20 or more years, you got to cut them some slack. It would be the same thing as seeing Michael Jordan when he played for the Wizards. It's the same thing as seeing Gretzky with the Rangers. You got to cut them a little slack because ultimately they get compared to themselves.
Yeah. And I have to be thankful that I had an older brother who took me to concerts when I was, a young kid. So I saw Genesis in, I think 1978 was the first time when I was 11 years old. I saw Rush as a 14-year-old. I started to go to concerts like by myself when I was early in high school. So I got a chance to see like Joe Walsh and Stevie Nicks and, at the Odd. And, so I got a chance to see a lot of these bands that are still touring, or a lot of these performers that are still touring now in their prime. And there are very few of them that I think can carry it forth and still perform on a high level. I know Fleetwood Mac was, and I'm not the biggest Fleetwood Mac fan, but I would have wanted to see them, but I heard they were great. The Eagles are coming next month to Buffalo.
They're the biggest money drain. I am against seeing the Eagles because of the exorbitant money that they charge and have been charging for like the last decade.
Yeah.
Totally against them. If you really wanted to sort of see the Eagles, then go see their former lead guitarist. Why is his name escaping?
Don Felder.
Go see Don Felder. He plays like 5 or 6 of his hits. They're great.
Yeah.
And you can see him for like 1/5 of the price, and he's still really good.
See, U2 is on my bucket list, but I'm in the same position with U2. I will not spend $200 to see U2. I don't, I had a chance to see them back in the early 80s when they played a smaller venue in Buffalo, and I passed up the opportunity, and that's just something I'll kick myself with for a long time. But I'm not going to go to First Niagara Center and spend $200 to see U2.
Did I tell you my U2 story?
Go ahead, tell it.
Live Aid. Okay, so I went to Live Aid. We left really early, like 3 a.m. Drove from Long Island to Philly, which now, of course, it's a 20-minute drive for me. But back then, it was like 4 hours. And so we made the drive. And when we got to Live Aid, there were 2 things I was really worried about with 100,000 people there. Dying of thirst and being able to go to the bathroom and have there be toilet paper.
Right.
I know these seem like very basic things, but when it's 90 degrees out,
yeah,
I worry. I was prepared, right? So I looked at the list. When you walk in, you got a list of all the bands that were playing. Sure. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the bathroom during U2.
Oh, boy.
They were fairly new. And so I did. And I heard them. I heard everything they played. I was just doing something else while they were playing.
Yeah.
And, maybe saw like the last 30 seconds of them playing. But for the most of their set, I was taking care of business, and there was toilet paper there. I was thankful I did that because a couple hours later, all those modern conveniences were gone. So you have to do what you have to do. So technically I saw them or heard them, however you want to put it, but I had to make, I had a plan.
You were multitasking.
I was.
All right, let's talk about some hockey here. We'll do away with the introductions because everybody knows this is Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I'm Michael Agello of HockeyBuzz.com. They know us. Eklund is in transit from Chicago to, I believe, Tampa, but he might be flying back home for a day before going to Tampa because Game 5 is not until Saturday. Right. Kevin Allen is also in transit as well, along with most of the press corps that is following the series. And now it looks like the series is going to go. Obviously, it could go 6, but it looks like it's going to go 7, which is what I thought was going to happen. And last night was a 2-1 victory for the Blackhawks at the United Center. And Russ, in watching the game, like after I knew the score, because I was following the game at the concert, Tampa seemed to have an approach early in the game of we're playing with house money. I don't know if that was what was behind Cooper starting Vasilevsky, give Bishop 2 or 3 days of rest for whatever injury it is. And, we're ahead in the series. So even if we lose, we have home ice advantage. But I mean, I got the impression that, the crowd at the United Center was very hesitant in the first period. And the Blackhawks, they only got 2 shots on goal. Tampa played really well defensively early in the game. What did you think of the game overall, but at least the start of the game?
Yeah, I thought that all that you said was accurate. I thought that maybe it was bad that Vasilevsky wasn't facing shots. At the end of the day, what did he give up? 2 goals? Yeah. I mean, nobody's going to blame him for a bad game. For a 20-year-old kid, he performed great. Mm-hmm. But I think Cooper did a very astute move because he said, all right, I could keep playing Bishop here, but he's not going to be here at the end. Or like you said, I'm going to just roll the dice on this one. We are playing with house money. And now he gave Bishop that rest. I sort of believe now it's his groin. And that's what the difference with the up and down is. And if that's the case, this is the only way his groin's going to get better. And by not practicing, not playing, and then maybe he could play the next game. And so I think that was a great move by him. The team responded. I mean, Tampa did play great defense. And at the end of the day, Chicago was very snake bitten. I mean, Patrick Sharp was missing open nets. Yes, I know he was in on that last goal, but boy, is he snake bitten as a scorer. He just can't find an open net. And Chicago worked hard, though. That Taves line worked extremely hard, and it definitely helped pull them through. But again, everybody's lauding the fact that Keith is like now played like, I don't know, 700 minutes, and it's just too much.
Yeah, I mean.
And Seabrook, it's just too much. Yarmulson now is starting to show the wear. I know you saw it yesterday, and because he's a guy that's not used to getting those exorbitant minutes like the top two, and now all of a sudden he's starting to feel it. It's going to be a tough go still. I know everybody goes, Chicago's got the heart of a lion. They really do. And Crawford did play a great game.
Yeah.
But the odds still are stacking against Chicago because of these injuries. And Kimmo Timonen, I mean, you might as well, for the time he's out there, he's just holding guys, right? Did you see anything beneficial in playing him?
Well, the only thing beneficial is that he's better than David Rundblad and maybe better than Kyle Kaminski. I mean, at least he has the experience to know that maybe he can get away with holding somebody because, I mean, there's that veteran experience. But no, I mean, to your point, I mean, they were very sloppy. There was a lot of sloppy puck handling, a lot of giveaways that normally their defense and their forwards don't usually do. I thought Tampa was the better team overall throughout the game. They had the better opportunities. Crawford had, I think, his best game of the series. Yeah. But as I thought, and I'm not patting myself on the back because I think everybody was looking at this. If you're playing Keith 30 minutes, you're playing Seabrook 26, 27 minutes. Now Oduya's numbers, I was trying to look up how many minutes he had, but I think he was probably, either 20 or a little under 20. Because of his limitations of what his injury is, that you're putting even more pressure on those top three guys. They're going to crumble. It's just a question of when, and it's starting to show right now at Game 4.
Yeah, actually, at the end of that game, look, a lot of times games look close at the end, but Tampa had some great looks starting from like a minute to go. Stamkos being one of them in the slot. He blew it. Let's face it.
It was deflected by Seabrook. It was deflected.
I know, but
he's got to bury it. He has to bury it. I
don't care if it was deflected by Seabrook or not. He's got to make sure it's not deflected by him. But there were some glorious chances there for Tampa, and Blackhawk fans certainly couldn't have been confident watching that. They had to be biting their nails. So, unfortunately, if you're a Blackhawks fan, that boded well for Tampa. That I know it's a loss, but I think mentally, because of everything that they're doing and they're going home and the home ice still – I still think they're probably thinking that's like a win in their mind. That's how much they're sort of like playing to the underdog role right now.
I mean, I stand corrected here. Oduya played 25 minutes and
that's
20.
Incredible.
I mean, that's incredible. In that we don't know specifically what his injury is, but he played more. He played more the second most amount of minutes. He played more than Yarmulson and more than Seabrook.
These guys are insane. I mean, they really are insane because. How do you – I mean, the fact that it's your hand and you need one of your two hands to play, I mean, it speaks to the toughness. But, again, getting deeper into this series, now with going to Tampa with the final change, if Tampa wins 5, they're going to win in 7. Chicago probably will not lose at home. They do have enough heart that I think they could pull it off at home. But if Tampa wins 5, I don't think they're going to lose 7. I just have that feeling. I know we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. This series has been impossible to call. I don't care if you call Tampa at the beginning, and I don't care if I called Chicago at the beginning, because now it's like attrition. Different guys are hurt at different times. We didn't know the goaltending was going to change like this. We didn't know about any of these things that were going to happen, so we have to sort of change on the fly too.
Based on the way Tampa has played in the first 3 rounds, they could lose Game 5 because they have before.
Yep.
And go, they lost Game 5 against Detroit, I believe, then won 6 and 7. They lost Game 5 against Montreal, then won Game 6, and but Game 5 in that series was in Montreal. They lost Game 5 against the Rangers.
Yep.
In Tampa, they got destroyed. Oh no! Wait a second. Did they? No, they lost Game 6.
They lost Game 6, and then they won 7 in New York.
The common thread there was the home game when they had the closeout game there you go. But you know, I don't put it past Tampa of losing Game 5 in Tampa and then going back to Chicago and winning Game 6. They've been great on the road and they've been only average at home. So, you know, I think it's possible. But yeah, I mean, who no matter who you
we're just juggling right now, like we really are. I mean, it's just everything's up in the air. But it's been a really great series. Again, you know, you can look at all the NHL notes about 1-goal games and everything else.
Right.
I think, 5 years running that all these games are like 1-goal games. It just shows the margin of victory is just so slim in the NHL. In a way, it's a little frustrating, but in a way, it does make for great contests. And so, like, if you do forget about some of the sloppy play and everything else, you have to think about just the mileage that's on these guys when they get into these games. I think that's the most important thing because nobody is fresh, right? There's just nobody.
No, nobody's 100%. But, you know, you have to tip your cap again to Jonathan Toews. I mean, he had struggled in the first 3 games of the series. He breaks through yesterday and gets the opening goal. He played, you know, Jonathan Toews game. He was there. He was accountable. He was exhausted at the end of the game. You know,
exhausted. After he missed that shot, he was like exhaling on the ice, you know, and he only had 3 hits that game. You know, I told you for Steve Stamkos, he's got to have like 10, 15 hits in a game. Like I know there's been games where he's had 10 hits. For me, that's imperative because you just have to keep softening up the Blackhawks. And I bet you the next game, any game Stamkos has had a game where he's only had a couple of hits, the next game he's come out on fire too.
Well, it's ironic because yesterday before the game, I heard Nick Kypreos from Sportsnet talking about the fact that Cooper has been using Stamkos not as much as Tyler Johnson. And I think it has to do more with the fact that Johnson, Kucherov, and Palat is the most effective unit. So he's been using
go with the line that's working best. I mean, you can't worry about who's making what and what the salaries are.
Right.
None of those things matter. Cooper knows these guys from when he was in Syracuse.
Right.
Most of them graduated with him, and if they didn't, then they got up the next – you know, they got that little bit of taste of the playoffs the year that he was up there.
Yeah.
And so you look at that and you say, that's really good continuity.
Yeah.
And it's the day he's going with continuity. It worked for him in the AHL. It's going to work for him in the NHL.
And with Stamkos, they've been shifting him from center to wing. They've been shifting his line mates. He's not getting as much ice time. And what Kypreos was saying is, you know, he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of next year, and he can sign his extension on July 1st. And if he feels he's getting shortchanged because he's not getting as much ice time, you know, the mentality is that Stamkos is your star player. You should be giving him as many minutes as you possibly can.
I'm going to win first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's what he's right now. What he's concerned with is winning the Stanley Cup. I mean, if there's, I don't perceive there's being a problem.
He's going to get keyed on more than Tyler Johnson. That's the fact.
Right. And in a way, he's drawing attention away from Johnson. I'm sure, you know, teams are putting their best checking center against Stamkos and not against Tyler Johnson. So, I mean, it benefits the team overall. Now, you know, Game 5, as I said, is Saturday. So you're going to have a day of travel, a day of rest here. I think that probably helps both teams where they are right now. Cause like we just said, you know, they're all nicked up and battered and bruised. In my mind, I think the extra day helps Chicago a little more because of the defenseman, you know, that we just talked about. Yeah. The only benefit with Tampa is an extra day of treatment for Ben Bishop. I would expect Bishop to be in Game 5, and if he isn't in, if Vasilevsky is in Game 5, then Bishop's done for the series.
I wouldn't say that either, but I think it's leaning towards that. But I wouldn't say that. But again, even if Vasilevsky's in Game 5, what did he really do, right? He was excellent. So that's the good thing. That's the good news for Tampa. Good drafting, good young players. They are staying in this because of all that. And another key thing, too, you know, for all the bashing that we've done to sort of Rick Nash and saying, hey, it's nice that you back check and you penalty kill, but you got to score. Now you're seeing the worth of Ryan Callahan, too, where it's like, all right, we don't expect Ryan Callahan to score like a Rick Nash, but you do expect all those other things. And he's been doing all those other things, and he's been getting better and better as this series has gone on. And he's never going to be a guy that piles up points, but boy, he's always there with a key play to get a puck in his zone, to, just do that one last thing to set up an offensive play, to make that hit. He's been terrific.
Yeah, and he makes a line, and he's been switching line mates in the bottom six lines. He's been playing with, Paquette or JT Brown or Boyle. He makes that line effective. He makes that line something that the Blackhawks have to fear. I thought he had his best game of the playoffs in Game 3. He was pretty good again last night. So, I think his character and his leadership and his experience are coming to the forefront right now. And, that could be a tipping point for this series, because right now, like Kevin said yesterday, these teams are so close that one little thing could swing one way or the other. So,
yeah, minute to minute changes in momentum, no doubt.
Yeah. Now I wanted to move on to the Arizona situation, because it came to a head yesterday, and boy, I listened to an interview with Anthony LeBlanc, the one of the owners of the Coyotes, yesterday, and apparently, for those who didn't hear about this, the city of Glendale essentially abrogated the lease agreement between them and the Coyotes. They used there was a specific portion of the agreement that they said that the Coyotes violated, and that gave them the right to break the lease. LeBlanc said that he is in contact with the NHL and that they're on the verge of putting a restraining order on the city of Glendale so that it will allow them to play this season at the Gila. Was it the Gila Arena? I think they used to be the Jobbing.com Arena. They changed the name in 5 seconds. And a $200 million lawsuit against the city of Glendale. Russ, this never stops. Right. And the thing is, right now, the NHL, if say the restraining order doesn't work, there's no place other than, I think, Quebec City that is ready to take on an NHL team at the drop of the hat right now. They have an NHL ready arena and could accommodate a team moving, but Vegas isn't ready. Seattle isn't ready. Toronto, the second team, Toronto, isn't ready. Kansas City has the building, but I don't think there's any interest. So, this is a disaster, and it continues. It never ends in Arizona.
It's a shame. It is sort of a disaster. One year, it's just going to stop. I don't know if it'll be this year, and they're going to fight tooth and nail to sort of keep it going. But now I'm hearing rumblings that, well, what if they switch arenas, and all of a sudden they're going to play in Phoenix, and is that even an NHL arena, or are they going to just deal with it because?
Well, isn't it where they played before? It was America West.
Yes, but is it still up to code? Is what I'm saying. Remember how the NHL is very picky about that? Are they going to be less picky about it? And is that really going to change attendance? I don't think so.
Well, I did hear this, and Elliot Friedman wrote about this morning, and I have friends who live in the Scottsdale, Arizona area, and there's been talk about this. There has been talk about the Suns and the Coyotes getting together and building their own arena in Scottsdale, which is where the building should have been built, because the center of the hockey fan base.
Yeah. What is the center of this fan base? Let's get down to it, okay?
It's a question of how many fans there is, not the center of them.
Right. So how many fans are there as Coyote fans? If I go look up the attendance, they're in the bottom third of the league. Yes, right. Every year. Mm-hmm. And so there's that. And then we want to always sort of say, hey, these guys in Glendale, they're crazy. They're this, they're that. They're losing money every year. They're losing millions every year. They're hoping that somehow it jumpstarts their economy. It helps them all. Meanwhile, I have friends out there, too, that are saying businesses are dying, restaurants are dying around that arena. It's dead. So I don't blame them for trying to get out. And if they find a judge that's sympathetic, they're going to get out of it. If they don't, then it's going to go another season. Now, the owners for the Coyotes, hey, they're new to this. I get it. They're probably in it for other features like revenue sharing, expansion fees, right? Those are things that owners can make big money on. So you're willing to take some losses. But at the end of the day, we never thought this team was staying long-term anyhow. And there was always a vibe at some point, if it didn't work out, they're going to move. Right. And so why are we waiting? I understand the fans will be mad. People could throw tomatoes at the screen right now. But we're just putting off the inevitable. And the funny thing is now that this has sort of become what it is, and the NHL put out a release yesterday, I think attendance gets worse this year because I saw that happen with the Expos because people that last year with the Expos, when they knew this was it, they weren't showing up. They were like, you know what? Done with it.
They moved them to San Juan. So, and that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get your point. The thing is, though, I mean, if they did build a new arena in Scottsdale, if there was that, if they went back to the America West Arena, and if it's not the America West Arena, I know they probably changed the name of it, but they didn't have an attendance problem when they were there, and then the teams weren't great there. Remember, that was the Roenick Kachuk days. They sold out, or they did pretty well
for Jeremy Roenick, and I don't know how many of those fans are still there, right? That was a long time ago.
Right, but the population of that area has increased. I know because like I said, I have friends who have moved there, and a lot of people from the Northeast have moved down there. Now you can say the people who moved from the Northeast are probably not hockey fans. They moved to the Southwest because they didn't want to watch hockey.
So
but
this is their last chance. To me, they should do this and do that for this year, and then see where they're at. And to be honest, if they're not somewhere in the middle of the league in attendance, the writing's on the wall to me.
Yeah, I think and from what LeBlanc said in the interview this morning, it's likely that the restraining order would take place while this lawsuit goes on, and lawsuits can go on a couple years. What they could be doing is delaying to clarify what's going to happen with this new facility. First of all, that area, you have a building that's less than 10 years old in Glendale, and now that's going to be in mothballs because it's not going to have any tenant, and now you're going to build a building 40 minutes to the west in Scottsdale. It's stupid, but they should have never built that building in Glendale in the first place.
No, they shouldn't have, and we know the bigger picture of this is to sort of connect the dots for the TV audience in that area, and we know that's a big thing because there is a decent TV audience, but at some point you got to give up the fight.
Yeah,
and you really do, and you have to move on. And I don't know, at this point, to be honest, I'm not even sure they deserve a team anymore. And I'm not saying it to be mean to fans. I'm just saying, to me, it's the same thing as these people in Hartford. They don't deserve an NHL franchise anymore either because they talk about it. Yeah, let's go. And they can't even sell out AHL. And they're not going to sell out NHL. And I know that. I've got friends out there. And so that's what I mean when they don't deserve it is, do they really, really have a base that's going to really get them through it? Like right now, I would like to see if the ownership said, hey, we're going to go back to the old arena. Let's see how much ticket prices jump up as far as season ticket holders. Let's see them put their money where their mouth is. Because if they don't, then it's just going to be whatever, a little bit better than last year, and you're still looking at potentially a sinking ship anyhow. And other arenas are being built. The one in Quebec is done. We know that. Right. So they could get a tenant potentially. Las Vegas is not done. Seattle has slowed down. And so
Toronto is non-existent, basically.
It's non-existent, right. So really the only place it seems would be Quebec unless we started with that Kansas City talk again because there's all of that. But at the end of the day, I say let's see what this last year can do in the other arena. But if like lawsuits hold out and look, and if this ownership wants to continue this fight because they're getting paid by Glendale for losing and because that covers their losses. Okay, I get it from a business standpoint, but from a team standpoint, it's not good for the team. It's not. It's just good for them financially that they're getting Glendale to pay for what's a losing franchise.
Right, they're gonna be a budget bottom team. They'll be making the up to the cap floor. And don't be surprised if you see Don Maloney going out there looking for deals where the cap hit is say $7 million on a player, but it was a front-loaded deal, and the guy's only being paid $3 million out of pocket. They'll be more than glad to take those kind of deals. Like I don't know if like say Brian Campbell, I don't know if his deal was front-loaded, but I think it was. If his money was less than $4 million and he was making $7 million as a cap hit, that's a player that Arizona would love because they wouldn't be paying a ton of money to him, and they would have the cap hit because they have to reach the cap floor.
Arizona is a team that's sort of stuck in the middle because they've been drafting pretty well for the last couple of years, but some of those guys aren't ready. The guys that they have that are ready are pretty good. They don't have that goaltender of the future. Visitin has never panned out fully. No. So they're sort of like in that middle range where you could almost rebuild them again. And you could, it's like you don't know what to do with them because they're just not ready to win.
Yeah, and now let's move to what we were, coincidentally having to do with Arizona with the draft, and it's 2 weeks. We'll be flying to Sunrise. Came out in the last couple of days that Don Maloney is, floating the possibility of moving the number 3 pick. Over the weekend, Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas said that the Leafs were open to trading. Now they said trading. I would assume it means trading down.
Yeah, I think it
from number 4. And okay, and I can understand it from both points of view. You got from both Toronto and Arizona. They have a lot of holes to fill. There's a lot of rebuilding going to be going on over the next couple of years. In Arizona, there's fiscal considerations. So trading down from number 3, if you can get a team that is a couple spots below to give you an extra first or an extra second or 2 seconds or something like that nature.
NHL's not slotted like the NFL.
Right.
They're not. So there isn't as much benefit financially to doing it other than the agent tells you, hey, you drafted 3rd overall, so I want every bonus possible. Right. Other than that, I don't think there's any other benefit. So here's the thing, and I know we talked about this. So give me that scenario that you ran by me yesterday.
Okay. Now this was speculation regarding the Flyers. The Flyers have the number 7 pick. They also have Tampa's first from the Braden Coburn deal. The indications out there are that they're interested in either Hanifin or Provorov, but one or both of them may be gone by 7. Right. So if they trade up with Arizona at 3 or with Toronto at 4, that it would be the number 30 and the number 7 pick to move up 3 or 4 slots. To me, like if I'm Toronto, because if Strome is gone at 3 and then it's a choice between Marner and Hanifin at 4, there's an outside chance Marner could be there at 7.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, it would make sense for Toronto to trade down 3 slots, because if Marner gets picked by Carolina or New Jersey at number 6, then they could have Matthew Barzal or Zacha or Werenski. I mean, to me, the difference between the 3, 4, or the 4 and the 5 guys, Hanifin and Marner, is not that much between Werenski, Zacha, Barzal, and the next group. And I think if there's an opportunity for a team like Toronto or a team like Arizona to get another first-round pick or a couple seconds, I would do it. I mean, I'm not sure if they would do it.
I would say this. When you're in between 3 and 7, it's going to be really hard to make a mistake. It will. And so at the end of the day, if that's really all we're talking about for jostling and I can get something out of it, then if I'm going to get one of the first 2 guys on my board by doing it, it's worth it. If I'm not, then it's not worth it. So like if I'm the Flyers and if they really are looking for Hanifin and Provorov, yes, that's probably the only way they can guarantee themselves doing it. But if I'm also the Flyers, I'm like, well, I just drafted Morin. I have Sanheim. I have Gostisbehere, even though he's coming off an ACL.
Right.
I mean, I do have some depth there. If I just wait it out at 7, and let's just say it's Werenski could still end up being better than Provorov and Hanifin. He has great potential. And so, then the trade doesn't make sense, if that's what I'm targeting. But then again, if I think, hey, I'm going to play it fast and loose and not do this trade up to number 3, they could still end up with Provorov or Werenski or Zacha. And if you're trying to tell me that one of those is going to be a bad move, that's crazy, because I think Flyers fans would be open to all of it. I know they have their preferences and they're going to say we'd rather have this than that. But at the end of the day, you have to sort of look at best on the board and then what fits your organization. And they do have a lot of defensive depth. Can you ever have too much? No. And that's why I don't rule out the fact that they might do this. But I don't think giving up 2 picks to move up a few slots when all these players I'm telling you about are terrific is worth it.
Well, I think the team more likely than Philadelphia, the team that because I wrote about this a couple days ago when the story first came out about both teams possibly entertaining the possibility of trading down. The team I thought had the most upward mobility was Columbus, because Columbus has the 8th pick, the number 8 pick. They have 3 second-round picks. They have Toronto's from the Gaborik deal. They have their own, and I think they have Anaheim's from the Wisniewski deal. So if they wanted to move up to 3 or 4, now their defense is not like Philadelphia's in terms of prospects. Murray,
and Murray is a little iffy right now. He is.
Right. They're going to lose Riley as a free agent. He's probably going to go. They traded Wisniewski, and Murray has been injury prone. They could use a horse on the blue line, and if that means Hanifin, or if that means Werenski or Provorov, then if they think that they need to move up, then I think they have the ability to do that by sacrificing 1 or 2 of those second-round picks.
For Columbus, it makes sense because 2 years ago they were talking about being a winner, then injuries hit, and now they're sort of at this middle point where they've got to go in the winning direction. Even though, look, Jarmo Kekalainen's a great guy in the draft. He knows what he's doing. He was there to the bitter end the other day. I told people, my joke was I left before he did, and he was probably waiting for Rupe Hintz to come out on the ice at 5 o'clock just to look at everybody, because that's the way he is. He's just an evil genius when it comes to the draft. So for them, I could see trading up to get one of those 3 defensemen. I could. And it would make complete sense for them to do it, because I think I had told you already with Columbus, my concern for them is, do they have an offensive defenseman that could really be that next guy? And I think the answer is no. Even in Murray, I thought the answer was always no. So I look at it now and I say any one of those 3 can be the guy that runs my power play. And if people think that Hanifin can't, they don't realize it. He's got a terrific point shot. He can do it. He just hasn't always been in the position to do it, but trust me, he can do it. So either one of those 3 are the way to go, and they could sort of play fast and loose and just wait for those first 2 picks to come rolling off the board. They know what they are, and then they could sort of see how the scuttlebutt is. They can go 3 and stop everybody in their tracks and get the guy they want, or they could wait for that 3rd pick, because if it is Strome, then all the defensemen are still in play, and then they could start talking to the Leafs. And so that's the way I would play it with them. I would play it literally minute to minute and try and possibly maneuver that. For them, it makes complete sense. Mm-hmm. On the Leafs angle, what would you say, Columbus is 8th?
Yes.
Okay. So I got to tell you, I mean, the way I have my rankings, I have Mitch Marner ranked 8th. Is it possible he'd still be there at 8? I think it's possible. There's always going to be somebody that drops a few slots. It's just the way it is. I mean, look, Erik Karlsson was drafted 15th. I just bring that one up and I chuckle over it, because nobody would ever redraft him 15th overall, right? It just wouldn't happen.
Right.
So there's always going to be guys. And so at the end of the day, if the Leafs do this and they do bolster their second round, there's still going to be a gem there, whether it's Marner or Barzal, or if they want Lawson Krause at the 8th spot or whatever. I mean, say what you want, but I mean, at the 8th spot, I could deal with that pick. I mean, that would be fine by me. And then you already got more for it. So, I mean, how's that bad?
No, that's not bad. And we're not including, and just delving into the Leafs for 2 seconds here, we're also not including the possibility of them getting extra picks if they trade Kessel or if they trade Phaneuf, because I know that Mark Hunter and Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan are looking for additional picks. That's why I think the possibility of trading down is there. And if it's 3 slots, and if they get themselves 1 or 2, I mean, Columbus has 3 seconds and 2/3. They have their own. They have their third round pick from the Steve Mason deal. So they've got 6 picks in the first 3 rounds. And if they see the opportunity to get the guy that they want and give up a couple of those picks, then I don't think Kekalainen's going to hesitate. I'm also wondering whether, if they stay at 8 and the defensemen are gone, whether he goes for the Finn, whether he goes for Rantanen.
Well, I'd say Rantanen would be a heck of a pick there. But look, I mean, again, what are we really talking about when we say the defensemen are gone? Okay, I'm looking at my own list. And
I think Hanifin and Provorov are going to go by pick number 6. I think both of them will be. So I think Werenski will be there, but and I've heard rumors of Werenski probably going to the OHL next year, playing for London in the OHL and leaving Michigan.
So
I
let's say a run on all these defensemen and Dylan Strom's gone. So then we really are talking about you could get Marner perhaps, you can get Connor, you can get Timo Meier, you can get Krause or Rantanen, or maybe even Barzal, right?
Right.
One of those guys, they'll be able to get one of them. And then if it's defensemen we're talking about, we're still talking about, I mean, I like Jeremy Waugh a lot. Some guys don't have him up as high, but he's a really good offensive defenseman. There's still Thomas Chabot. Killington is still a really good defenseman. I mean, a year ago, he was ranked in the top 5. It's just now he's not, because it seems like after all these reports, and I had discussions with, a couple of Swedish guys that watched him every day, that, hey, maybe there isn't that much offense in his game, but everything else is there. The puck moving, the speed.
Right.
You'll get a little more deep. I mean, so we're not talking about bad players here, right? And so
you know what Killington sounds like? He sounds like Anton Strawman. He's not overly big. I think he's 6 foot. He's good. He's good in his own zone. He's got good skating ability. He's got good passing ability. He's not great offensively. Strawman is not a great offensive player, and it took him 6 or 7 years of hopping from Toronto to Columbus to Calgary to the Rangers and now finally to Tampa. And now he's finally a complete defenseman. And maybe it doesn't take Killington that long, but it sounds.
If I'm the Leafs, I'm not even worried about defense first, because I got to get the best overall player. I got a lot of holes, right? And so if I could choose between Marner, Connor, Meier, Krause, Rantanen, or Barzal, I'll take one of those guys. Or even Konecny. You want to throw him in the mix?
Yeah.
Merkley too. I'll take any of those guys at the 8th spot, knowing that I got those other picks too. Right. That's fine by me. I mean, because at the end of the day, maybe you're passing up a potential superstar, but you're still going to get an all-star. And so I think that's the way they have to sort of think about it. And look, I mean, if Kyle Connor's there, he might still be a superstar. He's really got some unbelievable ability. Rantanen too. I mean, there's a lot of guys here. So I think for Columbus and the Leafs, makes total sense. I would totally look to do that. And for Arizona, they're in a tough spot. They are in a tough spot. And I kind of wonder what they'll do. I kind of think they're going to move down now based on all of this activity.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trade possibility with Philadelphia or with Columbus makes more sense for Arizona at 3 than it does for Toronto at 4. Because if either one of those teams trade up, I think they trade up to get Hanifin.
Well, I disagree. I think if Philly is going to trade up to that 3rd spot, then I think they're looking at this year and they're saying, we almost could be a winner if we put Provorov on this team, even as a bottom pairing defenseman, but he could play in the NHL, because we're all pretty sure he can play in the NHL. At that point, that's not a bad move, because now you've added a guy to the NHL roster.
Well, Provorov being picked third in the draft would be a sort of a game changer, because I think it would throw everything out of whack.
It would throw everything out of whack, but from a team perspective, you can't say no. If you've targeted a guy and this guy you already know, like, hey, he's going to be paired with this guy when the season starts, that's a big plus.
No, I think based on what you've said and based on what other people have said, it sounds like Provorov could step into the NHL as an 18-year-old, and that's a valuable commodity. And he's a tough kid. He likes to hit. He's got the offensive ability. He's got the skating ability. He's got the entire package. It wouldn't be a stretch to pick him at number 3 if a team trades up, because that's the guy that they want. Right. What I'm saying is, if Philadelphia moved up to 3, I think Toronto takes Strome at 4, and then you see how it falls through. I mean, I think it affects teams like Carolina, who they take at 5, and probably Arizona is going to get whoever's 2nd or 3rd on their list, because I think every draft list out there does not have McDavid or Eichel, because they realize the draft starts at 3.
Right, but I also think if you're sitting at 5, as Carolina is, if 3 gets traded, they lose a lot of trade value at 5. Like all of a sudden, because then the needs aren't going to be as great, because that need was already met. And so then at 5, you probably have to make that pick, if you're Carolina, rather than trading it. But if they're the first ones to trade it, and Philly, I would rather trade to 5 than trade to 3, because I'm still going to get a defenseman that's great.
And don't underestimate the motivation of Carolina to be one of those teams who trades up based on what happens with Eric Stahl over the next week or so, because right now they're talking about Eric Stahl about whether he wants to stay, whether he wants to sign an extension.
And he's gonna. We know that.
I would think so. It makes all the sense. You know, his brother is going to be there for a number of years. He's been there since he was. Yeah, he's won a cup there. He's the captain. He's still in his prime. I think he's still playing very well. I think they probably need to get rid of Alex Semen's contract to fiscally be able to afford the first.
No way do I want to trade that 5th pick to get rid of his contract? No,
well,
I'm that.
Well, maybe not. But I'm just saying. There are deals out there that would probably include that number 5 pick, that would include Semen, but I don't buy into it. I think that potential Toronto Carolina deal that was reported a couple weeks ago is very flawed. I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for it, but yeah. I'm just saying they could have the motivation if Eric Stahl didn't want to sign, if he wanted to just play out his last year, or they decide to trade him. You know, they might want to move up to 3 to get Strome, because there's your big center to replace Eric Stahl.
Right, and let me sort of clear this up too about Hannafin. It's not like I think Hannafin isn't as good as Provorov. Mm-hmm. The issue is Hannafin doesn't play as many games a year as Provorov has been playing.
Right.
And the thing, if you go look it up, Provorov's played a lot more games, and so that's just the plight of and the flight of the college defenseman, you know. And so I think I wouldn't put Hannafin in the NHL right away, because he will inevitably hit a wall because he hasn't played enough games. Provorov's played a lot more games.
Now, Eck pointed out in a blog yesterday, he talked about, you know, the possibility of offer sheets, in July to players, to teams that are in, financial straits. You know, Brandon Saad has been rumored regarding Chicago. You know, we know the situation that they're in after the.
And he's scoring big goals.
He's scoring big goals, and he's gonna get paid. I cannot conceive of an offer sheet offer out there that the Blackhawks wouldn't match. I think they will trade Sharp, they will trade Bickle, they will trade anybody they have to keep Saad. And I don't think he's going to get an $8 million contract offer. So it's something that they'll be able to afford. But Saad in Chicago, Tyler Toffoli to a lesser extent with the LA Kings because of their situation, Tarasenko in St. Louis, and the one that Eck mentioned was Dougie Hamilton in Boston, and the team that he specifically mentioned was the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I'm not saying that that's not out there, but Russ, I think that the offer sheet is dead, and especially for a team like the Edmonton Oilers. Do you think Peter Chiarelli is going to go to Edmonton, and this team has done nothing? I don't care if they're going to get Connor McDavid, but in the last 5 or 6 years, they've done nothing but lose. And they could still lose the next few years with Connor McDavid as a young player. Why in the hell would you trade your 3 first-round picks? Because it's probably going to be an offer that the compensation would be 3 first-round picks. Trade 3 first-round picks that could potentially be top 10 or top 5 picks for a very good young defenseman, but he's not the difference between them winning a Stanley Cup and not.
No, I heard the same nonsense driving to Buffalo, them having this Bubba Meister, how they're going to get Tarasenko and just overpay for him, and St. Louis is going to let it happen. Like, come on. I mean, you saw Nashville didn't even let it happen for Shea Weber, and they had no money.
Right.
They actually, every owner had to go out and borrow money or get money from their own personal funds and kick it in and throw it into the middle to keep them, and they did. Right. So based on that, why wouldn't the world, would any of these other franchises just let you pluck a player? And here's the other thing, too. There's always retaliation. And even though like a team like Buffalo thinks they could do that plucking right now because they have a lot of money to spend, 3 years down the line when all of a sudden – Tim Murray's no longer a genius because he has to spend money and he's getting close to the cap. Somebody's going to pluck one of their guys. And so that's the danger in it.
I think the offer sheet is dead for teams like Edmonton and Buffalo. The NHL general managers have to have learned from Brian Burke. Now, it wasn't an offer sheet, but basically the Leafs paid what almost was close to the offer sheet compensation in the deal for Kessel, and how the Leafs got burned. The Leafs were nowhere close to being a playoff team, and he trades 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick for Phil Kessel, and they finished 29th overall and give up, and the pick was Tyler Seguin. Edmonton, Buffalo, these teams are nowhere close to being contenders. They're probably going to finish out of the playoffs next year. Teams like them are not going to sign offer sheets because the negative is so prohibitive in terms of what it would cost. I mean, 3 first-round picks to Buffalo, you could be giving up conceivably a number 1 pick overall.
Yeah, there's no question. Here, I think the grade B free agent has a better chance because isn't that something like 2 seconds?
Yeah, something like that. I mean,
so like if you find that right guy as a grade B, where a team might just walk away from him, like the Rangers walked away. I mean, sometimes that does happen. Like they walked away from Dubinsky, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, Nashville walked away. No, Nashville walked away from Del Zotto.
Right.
That example. If you find that as a grade B, then you know what? That's something that's maybe worth exploring because as you see with the Flyers, Del Zotto is going to still be signed as an RFA this year, even though they're a cap team. He's going to accept whatever they pay him, and he's going to play. Right. And then he'll worry about his deal next year. But they basically got somebody for 2 seasons at a real control rate. So if you can get a grade B guy and you've got a team with all these seconds, maybe then it's worth it.
I think the offer sheet avenue is most available to the team that is close, that has cap room to play with, and that they could sign a guy who's a difference maker that could put them to the next level. A team like the Montreal Canadiens, if they went out and they gave Tarasenko $8 million a year for 7 years that St. Louis couldn't match.
Yeah,
they could absorb that because they have the cap room. The Islanders have the cap room. If they think they're a Dougie Hamilton away from winning the Stanley Cup, to add him to Boychuk and Leddy, that makes sense. But not Edmonton, not Buffalo, not teams that are out of the playoffs right now. It just doesn't add up. So I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, I could be wrong because Calgary tried to sign Ryan O'Reilly to an offer sheet, and that made no sense.
Right. I think for the most part the offer sheet's dead. I think you could see it for a grade B guy, but I still don't think we're going to see it. I think at the end of the day, it's just not worth it. Now, getting back to the Provorov-Hannafin thing, so in the last 2 years, not counting international play, Provorov's played 116 games and Hannafin like 68. So, I mean, that's almost a whole, it's like a half a season more. Mm-hmm. And then they both played some international games. And it just shows you that, as a college defenseman, you've got to play some more games, no matter what your talent is. Yeah. And so that's another key thing. I mean, Hannafin does not play more than 45 games in a season. So that's a big deal.
The other rumor out there that was circulated earlier in the week that, again, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. There was a report regarding Brandon Saad and Brandon Sutter with the Penguins and the Blackhawks.
Because Saad's from Pittsburgh, that is like a report coming out of Pittsburgh. That's everybody out of Pittsburgh praying that they can get a guy that they missed in the draft who was right in their own backyard. Not going to happen.
Yeah, not going to happen for. I mean, like we said yesterday, I think it was Kevin that said that the team that's in the biggest trouble cap-wise going into the summer is Pittsburgh. I mean, you've got
unless they put Malkin on the block, which doesn't seem like they're going to do it if ownership is bought out. None of this will happen.
You have potentially $7 million in dead money in Chris Letang, who may not. I mean, it's questionable whether he's going to either be the same player that he was before the injuries and the stroke. I mean, he was playing well when he got hurt.
Looks like he's going to play, but we don't know what he's going to be like.
Right, exactly. But so they may not get $7 million worth of defensemen out of Chris Letang. So, and yeah, it's not a good situation in Pittsburgh. I don't think, I thought that there was a chance that they might trade Malkin. Now it doesn't seem like it's likely. There's an impending sale going on with the organization, and they're probably not going to sell one of their biggest assets before they try to sell the team. So that's probably not going to happen. But, Chicago is going to hold on to Brandon Saad no matter what. I can't see any way that he is not going to be a member of the Blackhawks next year.
No, I totally agree. It just, to me, it's nonsensical. Sharp's the guy to go, and that'll solve a lot of things. And even if they have to solve more than that, they will. They do it every year. They go into the think tank, and you know what? And if somehow they win the Stanley Cup, they're not going to really sweat this anyhow. They're not. Yeah. So
No, Russ, you mentioned that there was some news about the NWHL, which I'm sure most people don't even know. I have to admit, I don't know a lot about it, but there are 4 franchises in the States in the NWHL, and you said there was some news about that.
Yeah, 4 teams are the Boston Pride, Buffalo Beauts, Beauts. Am I pronouncing it right? I don't know.
Yeah, that's beauty. Yeah, like Beauts for beauties.
It is, okay. Connecticut Whale and New York Riveters. And the Riveters signed their first player today, and I was on the phone call for that. It's an interesting thing because she came from the CWHL. Her name is Janine Weber, and she played on the Austrian national team, and she was part of the cup-winning team in, I want to say it was Boston. Yeah, Boston Blades, right? And so they signed somebody from the rival league. They're a new league. But she mentioned some important things, like this league is going to take care of her visa. This league is going to pay her. This league is going to take care of her sticks. Those are all things that became very public about the CWHL last year, where they were in the Clarkson Cup. And if you didn't reach your quota of tickets, I think it was, then all of a sudden players had to actually pay.
Jeez.
It really got bad, and I was watching that. And so now I don't blame her for doing it. And I'll even give you some info. I'm going to be writing about this later, but there is a salary cap. And each team each of the 4 teams has a $270,000 limit. And the average salary is going to be $16,000 and the minimum is going to be $10,000. And you know what? And to start, that's good, because what I think players will look for is, A, they're getting some work out of it, right? They're doing what they love. And the really good ones will get endorsements, and that will give them some extra money as well. Mm-hmm. That's what all this will do. But it's really great for young women to actually have games they can go to. Now they're going to have 2 leagues they can go to, because right now they're not going to compete with each other. Right. And there are these murmurs that maybe, down the line they would consider a merger. And if all this worked out, and let's say the NWHL has this financial model that works for women's hockey, that's a big win, because if you've watched women's hockey over the years, it's gotten really close to resembling men's hockey in the way the talent goes, the games go, the level of everything, the movement of the puck. A lot of that has improved so much over the last 5 years. And, you could thank Hillary Knight and a lot of other players for it. I've interviewed a lot of them on Sportsology. So I'm happy to see it. And I really was happy to be on the call. And I'm definitely going to cover now. The one thing about the New York team is they're not going to be on the island. They're going to play in Brooklyn. And so I'll write about, they signed a rink deal in Brooklyn. So that's good. I mean, hey, they're going to be near the Islanders, and maybe that even helps them more with the overflow,
I would definitely check out the Buffalo Beauts. I mean, I'm sure they're probably going to play at First Niagara. And they do. I'm sure they would get some people checking them out. I do think they should reconsider the Connecticut name for the team, because everybody's going to think it's a bunch of fat girls that are playing for the
I don't know about that.
Sorry, I had to go there. Don't hate me, everybody. Last note.
I'm happy that this league is at least up and running, and they have finances for the women. To me, that's the best thing, because they deserve to get paid.
Yeah, and I mean, I know exposed in some instance to women's hockey, since I cover the Leafs. I mean, women's hockey in the Toronto area is big, and people like Cassie Campbell, when she played for Team Canada, and Haley Wickenheiser. I mean, it's very big in Canada. It's starting to be very big, and those 2 teams are clearly the best in international play. And
getting bigger in the States too. It is, because what we're finding is, like, I don't have any daughters, right? But families with daughters, they're looking for things they could possibly do in the future, or just athletes and role models, just something. And so this could really be a boon for them, because, there is women's soccer. I know I made jokes about it on Twitter, but it's fine. Women's soccer definitely appeals to a lot of people. And so I think it's just great, because, 25 years ago, someone like Cameron Granato, there were maybe, there was definitely college teams, but there was really nobody for her to look up to. And it's more than 25 years ago.
But thankfully, because of
probably longer than that. But now they don't have to look that far to see great women's athletes playing all the time, playing in the league. So it's really moving forward in that way.
And there's a feeder system because of Title IX. You know, you have scholarships for women's hockey, scholarships for soccer as well, and that's a feeder system to these professional teams. So if the costs don't go out completely out of whack, then it's something that could be, sort of like what the WNBA is for the NBA, a companion league to go along with the NHL. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. One last thing here before we end the show. And tomorrow we will have hopefully Eck back. I'm not sure what the time will be, but we'll have Eck and Ty Anderson, maybe Kevin, depending on where he is. According to some reports out of Buffalo, and I've been hearing about this for a while, there's talk that the Sabres are going to buy out Cody Hodgson, who I believe has 3 years left on a deal. He's making over $4 million, but because he is 25 or under, the buyout would only count 1/3. It's 1/3 of the salary amount spread over double the amount of years of the contract. I calculated it before. I think it's less than $1 million or less than $1 million as a cap hit or something of that nature. So it would be, not even a factor, and they get out of 4 years of his contract. And I'll tell you something. I said this before, Russ. He's a guy. He just he needs a new start. It didn't work with him. He was put on the fourth line with Ted Nolan. It just didn't work in Buffalo. He was part of that Zach Kassian deal. I don't think that's worked for either team. He could go someplace and sign a 1-year deal, someplace like a Toronto or an Arizona that needs bodies. He's young enough that if he has a good season, he could turn it into a positive and go out and sign a big free agent deal next summer.
Yeah, I could see it happening because the kid's got good hands, and he definitely still has 15 goals in him for somebody. Buffalo doesn't have a great history of buying guys out. When they bought out Nate Gerby, they got killed on that.
It was a stupid move. I didn't understand why, unless there was some personal animosity in the Sabres organization.
Buy out like 35-year-old guys. I don't get when teams are buying out 25-year-old guys.
Yeah, but the Sabres have a history of that. They bought out a Buffalo native and Tim Kennedy. It was either a buyout or I think it was a buyout, because I think they walked away from him and let him be a UFA. And it was just, he had an okay year for them. He wanted a little increase in salary, and they said no, and they just let him go or bought him out. So, they don't have a good history with this, but it didn't work with Hodgson. He had one good year, and then they signed him to the extension. It hasn't worked here. Like I said, Ted Nolan, he was not a Ted Nolan type of player. And at sometimes he was being scratched. At other times he was being played as a fourth line winger, and he's a center.
Right.
And he was their second line center too.
That was the flaw of Ted Nolan. And I told people he was not great with young players. He was that team to win the Ted Nolan way. And that's the Ted Nolan way. And that's not good for that player.
Yeah, so I think Cody Hodgson, if he does get bought out, he could go someplace. And I keep saying Toronto, but I remember Toronto being interested in him when he was a young prospect, and he's only 25 years old. And this is an organization that's probably, with Babcock, is going to be giving some players in the interim while they're doing their rebuild, players they can get for little or nothing.
He'll get ice time, he'll get opportunity, and he'll probably get 15 goals.
And he'll get exposure. He'll be in the Toronto market. He'll be on CBC every Saturday night. And if he plays well, with Sandarelli and Winnick, those guys, they sold their wares on Hockey Night in Canada, and the Leafs benefited, and they benefited as well. So
I can see it.
Yep. Well, Russ, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely be doing a show tomorrow, as I said, with Eck and maybe with Kevin Allen and with Ty Anderson.
Make sure everybody wears the same colors too, because we didn't call each other, but it happened.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I wear green tomorrow. Okay. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello of HockeyBuzz.com. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.